What's up, everybody? We are here to not talk about my wardrobe, although we should do a stream about my wardrobe because my closet is a mess. It needs to be cleaned up. But yeah, we are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the Games Hotline. If you've been following us on social, we've been posting a little bit about that. Jay's been doing like 500 million interviews, and we just thought, like, man, wouldn't it be great if we just spent a little bit of time with our community talking about what we've been doing? Because I feel like the hotline can be a little shrouded in mystery, not intentionally, but just because a hotline is a private, confidential thing. But we wanted to create a little bit of space to just, like, I don't know, acknowledge that we've been doing this. We've been open for a year. We've been doing this for 2 years. That y'all have been supporting us and helping us get through, like, opening it and running it and all of that. And we also, like, have made a bunch of changes and listened to feedback. And I really am really proud of our process. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to share it with all of you. So if y'all have questions for us about the hotline, please drop them in the chat. And we will try to get to them, and we're just going to chat a little bit. So, Jay.
Yeah.
So Jay, if you don't know, which you should know, is our programs manager and hotline director, and basically, like, the hotline happens because of them. Really. And I'm really excited about how you approach this work.
Oh.
Yeah, like I think that we don't take the easy way out.
Yeah.
You know, like, we really sit and think about things a lot and, like, make choices that are really rooted on our values. And I don't know, maybe we start there about, like, how we do that and why we do that.
Yeah. I mean, I always, like, hold really close to my heart just how many, I don't know, like, how much space has already been made for us to do this work, right? Like, there are so many hotlines, there are so many crisis text lines, there are so, like, suicide hotlines have existed for such a long time. And there's also been a lot of folks, like, our partners Take This, who have been doing, like, a lot of, like, mental health work in games. So I don't know, I definitely hold close to my heart of, like, why are we doing this? You know, what makes us special, and what do we have the opportunity to build on top of? And that comes with, like, all of the space that has already been made, all the work that's already been done, and also what we have heard from a lot of folks as, you know, barriers to care for folks in the games industry, of wanting to reach out for help or wanting to talk about what's going on, whether that's with a friend or a, you know, therapist or something else, or a hotline, and feeling just like you have to really explain yourself, right? Like, explain that, like, you play a lot of games, but it's not an addiction. And, like, you know, that Twitch chat is this thing, and this is what hate raids means. And anyways, now I can talk about what's actually going on and what I'm feeling about it. We really wanted to create a space that, like, I don't know, was really intentionally centered around the kind of cultural experiences of being in games. So that's definitely one of our core pillars, is just, like, that specialty and kind of cultural understanding of things. I think the other thing that we're so intentional around is just the fact that we're really survivor centered. You know, like, this hotline came out, and, you know, you can tell this story better than I can sometimes. But, you know, like, the Me Too wave hitting games in 2019, and that feeling like a catalyst moment for folks. This has been going on for so long. Me Too things happening is bringing up so much for so many people, and there's so many stories that just haven't been told or heard. And so wanting to create a space where we can provide that real-time support to folks, especially to survivors, and thinking about how to do that in a really survivor-centered way, and pulling on the leadership and the experience and really like deep wisdom of folks who have been directly impacted by abuse in the games industry, abuse in game spaces, online harassment in game spaces, and online harassment online. So yeah, I think the intentionality that we bring to like what makes us special and why are we doing this work, I don't know, has really driven us from the beginning. So
yeah, totally. If you're just joining us, I'm Anita. This is Jay. We're talking a little bit about the Games Hotline. Also, stay tuned, everyone, because we are going to bring in our marketing manager, Asa, and we're going to play a really wild game that we kind of got sucked into before this. So that will happen after this little chit chat we're having. Yeah, I think that when I am thinking about values and stuff too, I'm thinking about how like the privacy, being victim centered and trauma informed really does inform so much of what we do and how we approach it. So one thing that we did recently that I think is really special, and this is very much like coming from you, Jay, is us thinking through how we want to support people who have done harm. Because how do we be victim-centered and survivor-centered and trauma-informed and also not turn away people who have done harm? And I think that the instinct for a lot of folks would be like, this is not your space, right? That if you have done harm, you are not, this is not a place where we will support you. But that's not how we approached that. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about like how we deal with accountability in those spaces and why we do that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's one of our major kind of growth points over this past year. It definitely wasn't something that we really anticipated when we were putting everything together, right? We were definitely thinking about the targets and the victims of harassment, the targets and victims of abuse in the industry, stuff like that. But yeah, we didn't really prepare for people who have caused harm to text in. But it actually, we started getting those texts really early on. Almost like right from the start, right when we
was
opened.
So surprising to us.
Yeah.
We were just like,
wait, what do we do?
Wait.
Yeah. And so, we got one and then we got another and they kept coming in, and we did have a moment of like, what do we want to do about this, right? One option would be, hey, like from what you're saying, it looks like you were really awful to some people. This isn't a space for you. Don't want to talk to you, right? So turning them away. We could also like lecture them, call them out, right? Be like, you don't like, I can't believe you did that. That was so objectifying and that was awful what you did. It's incredibly misogynistic. That was wrong. You're fucked up, bye. Like lecturing people, or we could make space for them, right? And what we ended up deciding was that if we really believe and look at harassment as an ecosystem, right? That it's not about some people for some mysterious reason are just more evil and more cruel than others. And it's not about bad apples. It's not about picking out, bad actors and throwing them away. Knowing that doesn't actually solve the problem of harassment because it is the system, it is these cycles, then we need to make space for folks to process what's happening, feel supported, and hopefully hold that door open for change. And so that's where we saw our role kind of maybe coming in, is that, these people are experiencing real pain as well. A lot of people who have texted in, they're describing situations that might kind of feel similar to some other online harassment chats of like, I'm getting a bunch of death threats. I got my like address doxxed. I'm just being bombarded and I've lost my social network and I feel so isolated and hurt and sad and I don't know what to do. Right. So a lot of those elements were showing up and those are painful experiences, right? Regardless of what caused them. The extra layer, of course, is that this all might have been prompted by some of their behavior, some of their actions, or some of their words previously that had also really hurt other people. And so we decided to figure out like how do we want to offer support to folks in a way that still held that survivor-centered accountability and didn't endorse their behavior either. Because the last thing we wanted, right, was to offer support, emotional support to folks, and then kind of make them feel encouraged about like any sense of like righteousness or that they should or could do that behavior again. And so, yeah, it was definitely a process of figuring that out. But at the end of the day, we really believe that people can change, and it would matter if they did. And so we think that as the Games Hotline, as this community resource, as this third-party unaffiliated space, that we kind of had a unique opportunity when these people were coming to us and asking for help to actually be there for that and hopefully hold that door open for change.
Yeah. Which, again, we were like, we anticipated like harassers coming to harass us and did a lot of work to prep for that and did not expect people to be like, I did some bad things. I mean, obviously more complicated than that. So yeah, it's been a really interesting process. And, you know, for kind of like a peek inside, like the process of doing that, or like of even figuring out how to do that requires us to make decisions about how we want to engage with folks who are coming to us with that, integrating it into our training so that our agents know how to engage with it, and like creating kind of guidelines for them in terms of how to talk to folks in that way. So like there's a lot of steps that go into like, you know, me and Jay can have all of these ideas about how we want to talk to people and engage with people, but we have to systematize everything. Right. It has to be reproducible in our trainings and with all of our agents so that the hotline has some consistency. So that's another huge piece of this is every time there's a decision about how we want to engage with a particular topic, it has to get integrated into our trainings for our future agents. It has to get communicated to our existing agents, and it has to be systematized in some way. So I think an interesting example of something like this is recently we've been getting more calls about blackmail. And we didn't have anything in place for that specifically, right? Like we have general like online harassment and you know, we have more specific stuff, but blackmail I don't think we really got into. And so it was just an interesting process of like Jay and I talking and being like, okay, who are the experts we know in this space? How, like what resources exist? Like let's create like we need to literally hand our agents like, here are the tools of how to talk to someone when they come to us with this. And remember, like we're not trying to solve we're not here to solve people's problems or give them answers to things. So there is a very delicate way to walk about like, what are the unique ways that we talk to people about different issues, right? Because like talking to someone about blackmail is different than talking to someone about doxing. And we like, you know, and we want to make sure that, again, our agents understand the differences between those sorts of things and how to communicate them.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason we really center like emotional support as the work that we do is because unfortunately at the end of the day, a lot of times there's just not a technical solution to like a social problem like harassment, right? Harassment is about the way that people are treating each other. It's about social dynamics, something that like surprised me and maybe it shouldn't have, but you know, when we first started, you know, building the training and figuring out how to like teach agents how to respond to online harassment, I think I was still thinking of it in a pretty kind of black and white way of there's strangers on the internet that can like dogpile you and like, you know, jump, and the stream went wonky.
Oh, the stream is fucking losing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's back now.
It's back now.
Thank you.
Yay,
Thank you,
we're back.
voice from the ether
Okay,
that you all didn't
thank
hear.
you.
Okay, I'm watching Streamlabs, so I see everything perfectly and totally didn't see that it lost it on Twitter. All
There
right.
was a ghost.
There was. Yeah, sorry. Can you
Yeah.
I think
I was saying
you were saying that it was kind of black and white
black
and
white. Yeah, I was thinking of like, okay, how does online harassment happen? It can be kind of like strangers on the internet, just kind of like dogpiling you, or it could be like, I don't know, like an ex-boyfriend wanting to like get at you and like threatening you or doxing you or something like that. But when we started, when we started taking these conversations and really hearing folks' stories, I think it really, really taught me and opened my eyes to how relational all of this stuff is. That so much of it is about online harassment, but it's also about friendships. It's also about communities. It's often about the people who are really close to us. And it gets blurry, it gets grayed because sometimes those people recruit strangers or something like that. And it also feels public in a way that doesn't maybe seem so much of like, oh, well, this is just about me and my friend, but it's like also on the internet for everyone to see. And so, yeah, I think that relational nature was something that I didn't really understand, I don't think, until we really opened the hotline and I saw just how many of those chats were about, yeah, that relational nature of things. And so anyways, I brought that up just to say that unfortunately, right, there isn't just a link that we can give or, you know, some instructions for some settings to change on your account or a way to report something that's gonna fix the problem, because often there is so much of that kind of social element to it, and just the human experience of being treated in a way that feels belittling or silencing or shaming, and to experience that in a community, right, from people who maybe you once trusted, from people maybe who you still love, and all of the messiness that comes with that. So that's why we really, really center our service and our resource around the human experience of things, of how, like, what would make folks feel safer, feel more connected, feel more comfortable, and also less alone, right? Like, at the very least, even if we materially change nothing about what's going on, we're a place where you can talk about it without, you know, without fear of like retaliation or escalation. It's fully confidential. So yeah, online harassment is so much more layered than I think a lot of us think about it as. And it's also so much more human. It's so easy to get bogged down in the technology and the like digital part of things, but at the end of the day, it's an incredibly human experience too.
Yeah. It's interesting for me because you know, we started talking a little bit about like where the impetus for the hotline came from, and you know, some of it is really the amount of conversations I've had with individuals about the harm that they've experienced, right? That like so many people are just like, hey, can you talk to my friend? They're being attacked online. Or like, hey, I don't know what to do. I'm really scared. I've never had this happen, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like the hotline was in some ways supposed to replace that, like that sense of, sorry, I got so distracted with Dr. B showing up.
Hi, Dr. B. Thanks for the raid.
Hi, thanks for bringing people. I can multitask. That like for me, it felt really. One, it felt like a lot of pressure on me in some ways to be like, okay, well, if I'm not in the mood for this right now, because it's heavy, like holding someone's hand through a really intense experience, especially as a stranger, is very heavy. I don't have formal training in it. I just have like a lot of life experience now. And you have to kind of see where everyone is at individually and like, and what have you. In some ways, I wanted the hotline to serve as an opportunity for everyone to have that kind of access, that it's not just like if you happen to know someone who knows me that you could talk to me, but it's not it isn't the same thing, right? So that's an interesting, it's just sort of interesting in my mind around some of that, right? Because like, you know, there is a lot that I have obviously given to the hotline in terms of my like experiences and knowledge and whatever. But one, the hotline far exceeds my experiences and knowledge. But it's also like what I do with individuals is so much of it ends up me giving them busy work. Because I'm like, you need something to do to distract you from the shit that you can't control, you know? And I feel like in some ways the hotline does do something similar where it's like, I'm here for you. What do you need? Like, I'm here to listen to you. And then like, do you need some resources? So anyway, I don't know what I'm babbling about, but it's just an interesting thing for me to think about in terms of like, how does this fill that need on a larger scale? And like the amount of people that we have already served is far exceeds the amount of people I could talk to one-on-one, you know, like, and we have like a trained staff on all kinds of different, like, issues, including like suicide prevention stuff, which like, I don't fucking know anything about that. Like personally, right? Like there is actual training that goes into this. So I think, I don't know, the hotline just constantly exceeds my expectations of like what we do and what we can do for people. And I think it's amazing. Bodhi asked us a question on Twitter about how do we care for the emotional well-being of our agents? And I think that's a really good question.
Yeah, I think that actually really ties into your own personal experience in supporting folks, right? Of when you're doing that, you're doing it alone, right? You're doing it as you, as one person, and it is really heavy, you know, to kind of listen to these sometimes really traumatic stories, to kind of really kind of hold that kind of grounding space, open space, non-judgmental space, taking yourself out of it and really making all the room for the person who's experiencing crisis or experiencing harassment or trauma or whatever it is. And, you know, the effect of all of that, right? The effects of harassment, of abuse, of toxicity is around that isolation, right? It makes you feel unconnected. It makes you feel, it wears away at your sense of self. It wears away at your sense of safety. It makes you feel silenced. All of those things. So on both sides, it can be incredibly like draining and isolating, and it's so easy to lose yourself in that. And so for us, part of what we are trying to offer to folks experiencing harassment is a sense of connection, right? And a sense of safety, even just in a little bit, in a little space, in just one conversation. We think it really makes a difference to have that connection and to feel like you're not alone and you're part of something. And I know that's not exactly the question you answered, but I really see that reflected too in the way that we treat each other when we're providing this service, because no one is doing this alone, right? None of our agents are just kind of out there in the wild, you know, holding this, having to figure everything out by themselves. We're all on a team, and you know, not only do we have the community sense of like we're doing this together, but there's also like supervisors on like available every shift to help offer extra guidance, or just kind of a second gut check on things, or help look up other resources, and stuff like that. And we provide a lot of tools and resources and infrastructure for the agents to do this work. So they have all of those things to lean on as well. And just in general, you know, we care deeply about each other, and we, I don't know, there really is like a culture of like, I don't know, care and belonging in doing this that can kind of trade some of that feeling of like, oh, this is so much to hold by myself, for like a sense of fulfillment, a sense of belonging, and doing this together. Yeah. When we hang out, we debrief, all of that. It's really nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, and really practically, like, Around when the news about Blizzard came out, we got an increase in calls, right? And an increase in that specific arena of issue. And so like Jay was like, hey, I'm setting up a couple of like, just like video chats for us to hang out in if people need space to like debrief and talk and be around other people. Like literally practically just being like Jay is holding space for them, you know, like in those moments as needed. And so like that's just a very practical example of that in terms of, you know, you're not answering the calls, but we can be there to if they need it, you know? Yeah. So there was another question. Drop your questions in here. So the other thing is that like, we know we're so in this every day that I don't really even know what people want to know or what's interesting or how to demystify how the hotline works. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. There's a question from Plinthead that said, what's it like being an organization that wants to focus on resources and service on an internet that bases an organization's success primarily on content and content engagement? Which I think is a really interesting question. And hits me a little bit because historically, Feminist Frequency is about creating content. I hate the fucking word content, but is about that, right? We made videos, we made like educational tools for folks, and then we shifted into service, right? So with the hotline, with trainings that we're doing and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it's weird. Like for me, it's super weird. I think we struggle with it because we also feel the impulse to create, I hate the word content, but to create educational resources and materials. So, you know, we've been talking about this accountability piece for a while. And so Jay wrote this beautiful post about it and we sent it out in a newsletter, and we actually started a blog on the Games Hotline website because we realized that like, we're not a for-profit. We're not trying to make money off of the hotline. So like, let's just give out all of our knowledge if we can, right? So we have a post that Jay also wrote around like, how do you do this for your friends? Like, if they don't want to call the hotline or you don't want to call the hotline, like it's not magic what we're doing, you know? Yeah. And so you can do it. And here are some tips. Here's how we deal with accountability, and like really thinking about how we can provide some, tools to everybody and transparency around what we do so folks can take that. And I think in some ways, like that's creating content, but it's very intentional. Like it's not just to get hits for us, right? It's very much like, how does it create a better community? How does it enforce? No, not enforce, not a cop. How does it support the mission of ending toxicity, of creating more welcoming communities, right? And that's how I think about when we do spend the energy on creating stuff that is not just keeping the hotline operational. I think that that's one of the ways we think about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talk about and think about all these things all of the time, and I'm constantly like building and improving tools for our agents in you know, about harassment and about what people are needing right now. And of course we want that, you know, my priority in general is making sure that is available for folks who are texting into the hotline, but I also want that available for people who might never text into the hotline, but still could like use that information. So it is definitely also one of our goals to just kind of share all the things that we're learning and building and all of that. So everything okay?
Yeah, I was just trying to type into the chat and just accidentally refreshed the page.
Oh, okay.
I know how things work. I didn't mean to freak you out. I just wanted to post the I just lost chat, but I wanted to post the link to our blog, to the blog, so folks can like look at the articles that we've been talking about and continuing to update that as we can.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what folks have been texting in about, some of the like trends that we've seen and stuff like that? Of course, without details because everything is confidential.
Yeah,
but
of course,
just overall stuff. So I guess we see. Where do I want to start? I think something that's been really cool is that we have been able to reach folks all across the games space, right? So definitely a lot of gamers text in, a lot of folks working in the industry, both developers and folks in kind of other parts of, because this takes so much to make a game, right? We also heard a lot from students, which I also didn't initially anticipate, but makes sense. There's so many students playing games like on esports teams at school, or in clubs, or studying games development, and stuff like that. And then a lot of folks just experiencing online harassment, with, of course, an underlying current of just mental health experiences in all of this. So yeah, I would say from gamers, we heard a lot about identity-based in-game harassment, with gender and sexuality being the most kind of common vectors for that harassment. We also heard a lot about like bullying and harassment from friends. So that would be like both maybe friends that they game with, or folks in a games community that they were a part of. And it happened both like in games itself, like in lobbies or something, as well as outside of games, right? In Discords, or sometimes in person as well. The harassment is rarely contained, right? It tends to bleed into a lot of different parts of your life. And so yeah. And then from, I guess, from the industry side, burnout was really huge. A lot of people talking about burnout, and then compounding with that, hostile and unhealthy work environments, different experiences of abuse and harassment as related to work or the workplace. And honestly, the burnout thing, it bled into a whole bunch of stuff, because it is like folks working in the industry are burnt out, but so are students. So are students studying game development.
Which
Students,
I think is fascinating, because like we're training, like games programs are training students to be overworked and burnt out before they even get into the industry. Like, and I feel like a lot of students, like, we all stressed out about being like, we're like, I don't know. It's been so long. I feel like I remember vaguely being stressed out about school. It was a million years ago. But I feel like that's like, a part of schooling, right, in general. Yeah. But there's something very like insidious and systemic to me about the way that like games, the games industry is so like committed to crunch in a way that is so deeply unhealthy, and how a lot of those people are teachers in these programs and run these programs,
Yeah, Anita, it's I would say worse than even that portrayal of things. There's so much mirroring happening. Students not only are like overworked and incredibly stressed and totally burnt out from their schoolwork, they're also dealing with that same toxicity, that same abuse from professors, from folks in the industry, maybe mentors and stuff like that, within that student experience. And it gets kind of meta at some point, because not only are they actively dealing with that, they're also, so many folks came to us so scared about facing that in the industry as well. Like, I'm so burnt out, I'm going through so much, I'm dealing with this toxicity, and if I graduate, if I even get to graduation, and then what, I get a job, and then I have to face more toxicity and abuse in the industry, right? And that kind of brings its own level of anxiety and uncertainty about like, can I even do this? Is this even worth it? And yeah, just like so many kind of crushing expectations and normalization of toxicity, and just the culture has really, really sunk its teeth in and seeped all the way through all of these spaces. And so of course we're seeing it in student spaces as well. It's really startling how similar a lot of these chats are.
Yeah. I was thinking about around, we get these waves of stories around workplace harm, right? A lot of gender-based harm, a lot of workplace or, you know, Me Too type things. And I was thinking about how that, like that not only re-traumatizes folks who have experienced it, but it also can be extremely stressful for bystanders who are just watching this like again and again and again, right? Or even seeing their peers or coworkers go through it. And then there's the people who are really afraid to speak up for a whole host of reasons. And I feel like whenever these moments happen, like it's not like anyone's ever forgotten about the harm that's been caused to them, you know, like it's not like that disappears. But I've just been now and several other times I've just interacted with a lot of people who are like, I either legally cannot say anything about my experiences, or like I'm afraid of retaliation because it'll be obvious that I'm the one that experienced the thing. So much so that folks can be afraid to even support other survivors, right? And I don't know why I'm thinking about that right now, but it's just when we're talking about like the emotional support that folks need in this space, it's so wide ranging, right? Like there's so many different nuanced ways that folks get anxiety and depression, and like the ways that their traumas manifest and the things that they're afraid to talk to other people about, right? And I feel like I'm so elated that folks trust us, that they would text us with these issues, right? And talk to us when they're afraid to talk to anyone else about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a resource that was like sparked first because of, you know, partially because of the Me Too movement as it hit games, it is incredibly gratifying that we are this time around, we're able to be here. And I really feel like we rose to the occasion. You know, it was around our 1 year mark. So we took that year to really grow and really respond and build out what we have. And, you know, we're by no means a perfect service even now. And I don't see that ever happening really. But like, I don't know, I'm so glad that we are able to be here for folks and that we really, have been there. And the thing you were saying about how it spanned like the impacts of news stories and buzz around Me Too, right? How it really spans such a wide range of folks. We definitely saw that after the Blizzard news dropped, right? It was, in some ways, trauma is kind of like time travel, in that it just manifests in past, present, and future, right? So yes, we were talking to folks who were like, this Blizzard news is so hard because I'm in a workplace that is just like that now. Or someone who maybe experienced really similar things 5, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you know, like, it brings it all back up, right? And we also talk to folks who are like, fuck, I'm in my last stage interview with this really big game company. This has been my dream job. And now I'm seeing all of this and I'm just so scared that this is what it's going to be like if I even get this job, which previously maybe I had been really, really looking forward to, but now kind of comes with all this terror and discomfort. Or folks who just started working in the industry and are just seeing all of this around it and feeling just so scared. And it's all of it. It's past, present, future. It's victims, it's bystanders, it's people who have caused harm. It really, really, this is about all of us, you know? At the end of the day, again, harassment and toxicity, it's about the ways that we treat each other. It's a really, really human experience. It's a human thing. So
I have a cookie delivery.
Oh,
hold
cookies.
on.
Okay.
Yo, okay, sorry, I thought that might come when we're playing games, but be friends with your neighbors, because I was cranky earlier and texted my neighbor that I was craving cookies, and they just appeared on my doorstep. I just got cookies.
What type of cookies?
Boogity boogity.
I don't know. Chocolate.
Mm.
They're like chocolate chip, but there's nuts in them. What a treat.
Nice.
Okay, sorry everyone. I was gonna say, first I wanted to surface trauma as like time travel is fucking brilliant.
Oh.
So good. And also the chat like lost their mind about how good that was too. I feel like that is so accurate. And such a sort of tender, delicate, accurate way to describe how to describe the experiences of trauma and the impacts of it. I'm so distracted by the fact that I just got cookies brought to me that I completely lost my train of thought. Cookies. Fuck. We were talking about people calling in. Oh, I remember. So, okay, well, two things. One is, actually three things. One is we're going to start playing games soon. So if you do have questions, now's the time because we will not answer your questions later. That's not true, but now's the time if you want us to actually pay attention. The second is Jay mentioned that when the Blizzard news came out, it was exactly our 1 year. And there was this moment where Jay was like, we're ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like messaged me and was like, what is happening to the video? You haven't seen it yet, but it's like popping. Ugh. It's cool. It's fun. You're just gonna shrink and get bigger and smaller. It's fine.
Interesting.
Anyways, I don't know what's happening. It's really weird. But there was this point where Jay was like, we're ready for this. And like, and I remember you saying to me, like the timing of this is so, I mean, it's really weird to talk about horrible things and timing, but like, we wouldn't have been ready for this 6 months ago, but we are now. And I think that that's really a testament to like the fact that it takes a while to learn how to do things properly, right? We've gone through 4 trainings now. I think we've trained 4 classes of people, and every time, and Jay builds and does the trainings, and every time like is like, okay, we need to focus on this, we need to change this, we need to add these things, and all of that got us to the point of like feeling like we can finally, but that like we were ready for this moment to happen in a way that we've wanted to be here for the community. And that has been community driven, right? It's been driven by our agents and like their feedback to us and what they need and how they can feel more empowered on the line. It's about people calling in and what they're calling in about. And it's what we're seeing people talking about in the larger community. So like we're not operating in a vacuum here, right? Like when we started, we made a bunch of guesses. Right? We made some guesses about what stuff we should be prepared for, and we were pretty dead on, like, let's be honest, about quite a few of those.
Yeah.
But over time we became more nuanced, we became more detailed, more clear on some of that. So I'm excited about where we're at now. And it, again, anyone that works in like direct service around topics that are difficult, it's really weird the things that you get excited about, because it's like we're not excited about people being in pain, but we are excited that we are here for them and we're present for them in a way that like is useful and it can be impactful. So
I think I think you said this something about how like I don't know, harassment and toxicity in the game space has been mainstream knowledge for the past decade, right? Like it's kind of like a family secret. We all know that it's real bad, and like most of us have experienced it and witnessed it, but it's something that also kind of feels like we don't want to talk about, or like it's just how it is, or kind of gets minimized, or there just isn't as much like space to be like, okay, so what are we gonna do? And so I think part of like just the hotline existing and us creating this space to talk about things, you know, it's things don't, you know, what you resist persists, right? Like things don't change from just like pushing them down and like saying like, oh, that's just how it is. I know you know this, but I do think that is like some of the power of the games and online harassment hotline existing, kind of as just even naming the problem and saying that we're here to talk about it. And the stories coming out from Me Too, they're not a surprise to a lot of us who have been around games for a while, who have been in the industry, or who, you know, have just even like listened to folks share their stories about these things. This isn't new. This isn't shocking. It's the same story that we've heard over and over again. And so really what the news is that it's in the headlines in a different way, or that it trends in a different way, that more people maybe talk about it and listen to it in a different way.
And there are more resources around it.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't before, you know, and not just us. We're talking about loads of other organizations and articles, and, you know, just there's more understanding and more infrastructure, you know, community-led infrastructure, not like institutional infrastructure, right? Let's be clear about that.
And so that's what is exciting and celebratory to me. So like, it's not exciting that like, oh, all these people are experiencing pain, but like, oh, there's this stuff, there's support, there's resources, like you said.
Yeah, I think one other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is just my own thing, but is that my work has always been rooted in systemic and structural understanding and attempting to change systems, right? And to me, when we started this, I was like, well, how the fuck is a hotline doing that? Like, how did I go so down and into an individual space, an individual care versus like large systemic change? Because I was like, well, I make these videos that are going to have a much broader audience than me just like, I don't know, teaching or like, you know, talking to a couple people here and there, right? So what is talking to one person on a hotline, right? And I think over the time of doing this work, of having a lot of conversations with Jay and our other partners, of really understanding that the infrastructure of what we're building and the tools that we are offering and resources are part of changing, like the systemic change. Like we are offering systemic change by existing, right? We are offering the space to say, like, to encourage people to seek help, to encourage people to take mental health seriously. And if whether you are actually calling the hotline or not, having us be present and visible in these spaces, having companies use us as resources for their employees, having us just present, I think does a lot to help destigmatize mental health and to encourage people to take these issues seriously, like that it's not just a thing that you can sweep under the rug. And so I wanted to just share that because that was a journey I had to go on through the process of deciding to do this work and how it might align or not align with my politics in some ways.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is like, it's staking a claim of like, this is a way to say it's not okay, you know, that harassment isn't okay. And that we should be treating each other with more compassion, and that reaching out for help is a good thing.
It's a great thing, and it's so hard to do. It's so hard for people to do it, you know. There is when we first started thinking about marketing, and we were writing the video, the Games Hotline video, I was like, I don't think I would ever call a hotline. Like, I was literally sitting there being like, I'm starting a hotline and I've never called a hotline. And how do I just kept being like, what would get me to call a hotline? And trying to think through that, you know what I mean? Like trying to think through, how do I convince myself that this is a valuable tool, you know? And I did. I think me and my co-writer did a great job of writing that video. And I was like, damn, this sounds fucking dope. I want to call this thing. Like, I've definitely had moments of being like, can I just text? And I could totally text the hotline. Nobody would know it's me because we've built in so many like confidentiality and anonymity things that like the agents have no. You could text 3 times and the agents would have no idea that it was the same person, because like that's really important unless you tell them. So anyways, I've just had moments of being like, man, can I just
Yeah, you could.
Can I just text right now? Because this is a hard fucking day, man. I've got like three people asking me what they should do about their shitty bosses.
Oh no.
So
I want to say too that like again, to return again to like harassment and toxicity and abuse being about the way that we treat each other, right? And that is a simplification. Of course, there are the systemic, things involved in it. I never leave that behind, but it is in some senses, really about how we treat each other. And I do think that us making space, right, taking space to be compassion forward and show folks a different way that we could talk about harassment, that we could treat each other, that we could share vulnerability and center healing in a really like non-judgmental and shame-free way. That I think also that is what drives culture change as well. And so modeling that and sharing that and spreading that, whether it's through the hotline or through other conversations or other resources that we build, I think that does a lot of the work of shifting culture change too.
Yeah. And we are not, again, I just want to shout out, like we were talking about Take This earlier, like we work very closely with them and like other community partners. Like we're not doing this work in isolation by any means, and really rely on like all of these great organizations that have come up that are really rooted in related or similar values of just trying to make this industry a better fucking place, because it's such a nightmare sometimes. I feel like this is a nice way to wrap up this section, but I'm going to ruin that because we did get a question in the chat. MZ Suit says, how long are the trainings? I'm curious about the structure of the trainings and how you came to that.
Ooh, big question. So we currently partner with a center that has like a long history in doing suicide prevention work and mental health crisis intervention work, both on a national and local scale. And we were just really impressed with their values and the way that they did their work. And so we kind of worked together to bring the Games Hotline in as a part of that. And so the volunteers that we use all have gone through their training already. So they have a pretty intensive training. I think it's almost like 100 hours where they fully train folks like from the ground up on suicide prevention, on mental health crisis intervention, on all sorts of different skills and counseling techniques and all of that on the mental health side. And then for folks who are interested in joining the Games Hotline project, they go through an additional about 10 hours of training with us. So it's like split up into 2 days. And because they already have that kind of counseling training, that mental health background, we just add in the kind of games context, covering everything from like gaming communities and what they're like, and the games industry and what that's like, and content creators and what that world's like. And then teaching them kind of the additional special skills that are required to like kind of take text on the hotline around, online harassment response, like kind of some specific basic guidance that we can offer, as well as the like accountability skills, because we do, like, compared to like a suicide hotline, we have a lot more conversations that have that accountability nuance to them, because we get folks texting in who may have caused harm. And so we build up on those skills and talk about abuse and harassment, how it happens and how we can help, so that they feel prepared to have that context when folks text in, while leaning on their existing kind of like mental health, crisis intervention, suicide prevention backgrounds. So it's a lot. It's been iterated over and over again too.
Yeah. And also, we like, it's not like a one and done either. Like we have an ongoing like communicate, like we chat with them and we're like, hey, this thing's happening today. So when the hate rate, like news about the hate rates was coming up, I think this was yesterday, Jay went in there and was like, here, like if people need some advice, here are 5 things that they can do, and just like gave that to the agents yesterday, so that if people texted in about it, they would have tools, because that was such a specific scenario that we like couldn't possibly have trained them for, right? So there is ongoing education in real time that's happening as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
Jay's the best. Can I just
thanks.
tell you all? Everyone needs a Jay.
Yeah. A lot of our agents have a games background, but not all of them. And so we like definitely make sure to like cover all the bases. And even folks with a games background, they also always like have stuff that they were like, I had no idea that the games industry was like that, or that content creation was like that, and or you know, some of the stuff around how online harassment happens. And so we do try to take like a really holistic approach to things and kind of account for all of the like backgrounds that folks have, and where folks are coming from and how they're approaching this work. We have had a lot of interest from the community, from the feminist frequency community, and other folks supporting our work, really loving what we're doing and wanting to become volunteers. Unfortunately, because of the way we have things set up, right, we only use volunteers from that center that we partner with at this time. But it's one of our goals, maybe one day in the future, to be able to bring community members and train them from the ground up with like the full kind of skills building around mental health and counseling and stuff like that. But if we do it, we want to do it right, and it takes a lot of infrastructure to facilitate that. So it's something that we are dreaming up and working on, but unfortunately isn't open yet. But it is really validating and exciting to see how many people are just like really interested in supporting us.
So many. It's really exciting. I know. It's like, it's on our dream list to have our own, to build our own whole thing so that we can bring y'all into that and be a part of this. So, should we play some games?
Sure.
You know, y'all, as you're here, we're going to go switch over and play some games. But if you like these conversations or want us to do more of this, or like actually have questions for us, please, like, you know, if we get enough questions, we could just do another little section like this. So, you know, I would like to be able to be more transparent with you all about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and destigmatize like what the fuck a hotline does and how it works, you know? So I'm happy to do it as if folks request it and would like more of that. So
yeah, I love gushing about the hotline. Can you tell? It's very important and loving to me. So I don't know. It's been very indulgent this month to just gush about all the cool stuff that we do, because I'm really proud of it, and all the ways that we've grown, and I mean, we like doubled our hours this year. We opened on weekends. We like had so many like tech upgrades and troubled so many things.
The tech upgrades. I love the tech upgrades. It's like the little things it's the weirdest shit that you can't brag about, right? Because it's not like you can be like, I got a new studio space and you can see it in my videos or whatever, right? It's like, it's the tiny little things that you're like, what, like, you wouldn't have thought would be that difficult to implement, but is, and like needs all of this work to do. So the fact that we were able to make it so that people could text in at any time of day and be put into a queue was like huge for us. Because before, if you texted when we weren't open, it would just be like, sorry,
text back.
Tough luck.
Which puts the onus back on the person who needs support. And so this way, they text in at any time and we'll text them back and not rely on them to like remember our hours and text us later.
Right. With the confidentiality of like the agents still don't see your phone number, right? Like, so there's a lot of stuff. So little things like that were huge for us. And we have this big wish list of things that we want to do to make the hotline even better, which are ways that users don't really see or experience. I mean, they don't know that that's what's happening, and they don't need to know. But for us, we're just like, ooh, we did this thing. Yeah. You know, expanding hours we do with a lot of care, because we don't ever want to have to reduce our hours, right? So like if we expand them, we need to make sure that it's like forever and that we're only moving in one direction. So yeah, anyways, yes, I'm very proud of what we're doing. I'm proud of Jay. I feel like this is like you should be proud, because this is your you came in and just like made this thing way better than I could have ever imagined. So
Oh, thank you. I love this work. It's so it's so significant and meaningful to me to have the opportunity to do it. And yeah, I am just incredibly proud of what you've done. And I think Feminist Frequency is such a good home for it. It's building off of so much work that you've like kind of set into place for like the groundwork of this. And
cool.
yeah,
I'm just gonna go
it's
retire
awesome.
now.
Yeah.
Bye.
Let's drive off into the sunset.